We'll just give maybe 1 or 2 examples of counterfactuals. This media, whatever it is, positive or negative, this is the voting pattern, positive or negative. If the media didn't do what they did or didn't do it the way they did it, maybe the voting pattern would have been the same. This is it. In absence of the media, would the voting pattern remain the same? So we can now attribute whatever pattern that emerged because of the presence of the media. Those of us in media studies, you know what it means. It's very difficult to prove that the president failed because of certain areas. So we need to do that. So that's why it's very difficult. Research is not an easy thing. So how do we go about it? That's what we'll be doing maybe after this, for the next 4 days. After that, we'll be dealing with this in terms of what can you do. Maybe you may need to combine methods to be able to prove that it's the media that led to the voting patterns. But the important thing is that it's not so easy to prove causality. One method can do it, but multi-method may do it better. So we are going to come back to that. It's okay. All right. So things to note about causality. And we are coming nearer to the issues. Yes. Okay, Father, please.
I think someone asked this question in the morning. Maybe Ade and Jessica or someone about how do we know when to stop? The boundary.
Yes. That's good. So this is a kind of a description of cause and effect. And that is also, it helps us, one, to know that research causality is about focusing on simple things. And those who are background will also determine the type of things we focus. For example, here, we can say that not maintaining the cells led to C failure. Then, what led to C failure was a kind of leaky valve. And what led to what led to leaky valve was C failure. What led to leaky valve, wet surface was leaky valve. What led to someone sleeping was wet surface. What led to someone falling because the person slipped, and what led to injury was fall. But for us as scientists, all of us in this room, we may find a place in this study, and that's why we will remain as scientists. For an environmental scientist, what will he be interested in? He may be interested in wet surface and slippery. Maybe somebody in the environment. So the geographer there, maybe your interest will be just wet surface and the maybe leaky valve or whatever, slippery. For an engineer, his interest may not be this. His interest may be why do seal fail? For a civil engineer, why do seal fail? He started tracing the issues and he know that it's the issue of maintenance. Am I right? Maybe for a nurse or somebody in health, his interest is in injury. Why do people have injury every time here? Because they do fall and they begin to trace it. So that's why we mentioned it, Michael, about boundary. So every study will have a boundary. And that's why when we begin to describe the causal diagram, we begin to bring these issues. You are not interested, that's why you cannot do everything. If you begin to do everything, it becomes what we call in Nigeria, Bobonise. Nigerians will not understand. There's a local drug in Nigeria that comes in a little cake this way. Inside it, there's everything. And that drug cures everything. If you have stomach ache, you take it. If you have headache, you take it. If you are injured, you put it there. Anything at all. If you have snake bite, you drink it. If you have maybe whatever.
There's evidence for that.
The evidence we do not know. But the understanding is that it cures everything. Research do not do that. It's difficult to have a research that does everything. So it must be focused. It cannot be. If you are doing that, I tell my students once they come with their bogus research topic, I say this must be Bobonise research. Yeah, it's going to solve every problem in psychology, and I'm sure that your brain will not be able to cope with solving every problem in psychology. Why not select the little thing you can do and let us do it well, and we'll be able to speak to the international community. So that's actually what it is. Okay. So we have also started reflecting on slow mans. Kemi started it. Then from what we have discussed so far, can we go back to that story of Sloman? Some of you that were in the module, I'm sure it was there are a lot of controversies there. Yes?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Evelyn.
I'm just linking this with what we did in the first session. In terms of challenges to critical thinking. And maybe I want to go to the example which was given, so that I'm looking at the cause. I'm looking at the cause variable. And there's challenge of common sense, where we say motivation and corruption in police. Mm-hmm. People know they're paid little money, that's why they actually what? Corrupt.
Yes.
So somebody said, but that is a common thing.
Yeah.
So at what point now do I bring the issue of the Z, the mechanism, to overcome the challenge of the common sense?
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm just looking at that. Where we now have these, the mediating variables, you're saying the Z. Mm-hmm. If we handle the Z, then the Y, the X of motivation will not bring about the corruption.
Yeah.
How do I go about that? I'm hoping I'm not being so complicated.
No, not at all. I'll just explain this so that that's actually what is going on in the science world. We know about X, we know about Y, but majority of the problem we have in the world, we don't know about the mechanism. If you pick any journal at random, published this week in any top journal, what they continue to push is that mechanism. Once you begin to bring mechanism, we are no more talking about common sense. Because nobody knows the reason why they are happening. But they know that police are corrupt. Or corrupt police officers take money. But why do they take money? Why not do other things? Once you begin to look deeper and deeper and deeper, you are challenging common sense. You are critically imagining. And it requires a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge. And once you begin to do that, you are speaking, you are filling research gap. Because A is known, B is known, they don't have the connect, but we do not know what lies in between them. And that's actually why we're doing research. And that's the simplest way to even contribute to knowledge. Once you start, and I also know, some of you who also, most of us are scholars who are interested in publishing, there is no way you can publish any study today without saying that this is the first study. That's the first thing the editors will hear. And you should mean it. It's not just maybe you read 2-3 papers and say this is the first study. What they do is just to refer you to 3-4 studies and they return it in the evening. That have done that long ago. So what it means is that, yes, a lot of people have done this, that have related this, but this is the first study tracing the reason why these things are happening through this mechanism. They say, yes, let's hear how you did it. And they can now begin to think about the methodology. Do you understand what I mean? So I think that's a good point, Evelyn, please. We appreciate that. So back to Sloman. Any reflection? Yes. Just one, so we can move on. We started with Kemi. Is there anything that we didn't cover again from Sloman? Yes. Yeah, please.
Except different comment on Sloman.
Okay.
Reflecting on the previous slide we had before, there's the one on how far do you go?
Yeah.
And now that we're also talking about research that is impactful on policy,
Yeah.
I sometimes feel at a loss because I find that as researchers sometimes we overuse caveats in the name of limiting the research so much, such that even the evidence that you generate applies so narrowly to a phenomena and it cannot now be
Generalized, yes.
Exactly, and we do that because we're trying to just. I feel like we don't want to be poked so much. And so you find research that probably says things like, so this does not apply to this, it's not in the interest of this research to go into such and such a thing, and we do that in the name of, we're limiting our scope so much, and I'm really curious about your comment on that in relation to when and where do we stop in terms of investigative causality.
Okay, I think we'll take that up later in Miss Method. Because we need we appreciate that. So we need to go deep, but we also need deep breadth. So we are going to do that. And missing method may help you. Some method may enable you to focus. You may combine another method may enable you to generalize. So it's really important. Because if you continue to overfocus, you may also miss a lot of very relevant information. Okay. All right. So we are also noting points on causality. Next point to note on causality is that causation is not correlation. And I just quickly tell this story. Sometimes we could feel that correlation is causation. Most of the studies we deal with in our everyday writing is correlational studies. But along the line, once we finish the study, we begin to claim causality. Our recommendations, our writing will be mimicking those who did causal studies. And that's why we do not really go far. We'll be battling with editors, battling with policymakers. Yes, this is related, but it's not a cause. They will please continue to emphasize the limitation. That is not a causal study, it's rather a correlational study. This is just a story of a lion and a rabbit. And I'll just use it to show that causation may not be correlation. This is a lion who challenged, a rabbit that challenged a lion. He said, do you know we belong to the same group of animals? He said, what do you mean? He said, the way white animals are scared of you is the way they are scared of me. That wherever I go, white animals, our colleagues are always afraid of me. And the lion said, what do you mean? He said, can we do an experiment? They moved on a journey. And the first group of animals, they saw rabbit, and they all disappeared. And rabbit turned to the lion. Didn't I tell you that the way they are scared of you is the way they are scared of me? Lion said, it's not true. Say, can we move again? They moved and met the other group of animals. Immediately they saw the rabbit, they disappeared. They said, why shouldn't we be dining and enjoying ourselves together? We belong to the same folk. But I ask this class, is it the rabbit they are scared of or something else? But assuming that we are to run a correlation, the relationship between seeing the rabbit and disappearing, wouldn't you say that is they are scared of the rabbit? So, but it's just more of association rather than a causation. And that's the type of things we'll do. And I'll give maybe another example with a typical spurious, what we call spurious correlation. Anybody an economist here? If you're an economist, I'm sure you understand when we use the word spurious correlation. Let me explain when I'm sure, do you understand when I say correlation? Everybody here in this class understand when I say correlation? Correlation. Anybody that didn't understand what? Correlation means something is relating to another. A variable is relating. Appearance of one variable is occurring with the appearance of the other one. We'll say is a correlation. They are correlating. So this is a real data, not forged, nor cooked. And if you go to this website, there are lots of these correlating things that are totally meaningless. Maybe we can also correlate here the number of participants in IITTA, correlating with the number of students that failed in UI. The more you have people in IITTA, the more students fail in University of Ibadan. And you can correlate it over time. Every year that you have more people in IITA, you go to the University of Ibadan and check their results, they will fail more that year. So what it means is that if you want to have less failure, you should reduce the number of people that are coming to IITTA. The same thing here. You can say age of Miss America correlating mother by steam, hot pepper and hot objects in the United States. This real data. And can't you see this? It's almost perfect relationship. So what it means is this for policy. And that's why correlational study is dangerous for policymakers. If you are to intervene here with this result, what are we going to do? We are going to make sure that before you win Miss America, if you want to reduce the death by this method, there should be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The less they are, the better. But if their age continues to increase, the death through this method continues to increase. Are we seeing why correlation is dangerous for policymakers? And that's the type of studies we do, and we'll push it there. They try it, it doesn't work. You finish a correlational study and say one causes the other. And the politicians say, okay, let's try it. And they pump money. They pump money. The more they pump money, the less they produce. What it means is that we are not dealing with causation. We may be dealing with correlation. Huh? Okay. Another thing to note in causation is that the direction cannot be reversed. What do you understand what I mean by that? A cause will remain a cause, an outcome will remain an outcome. An outcome cannot cause cannot become a cause to the same outcome at the same period. You see our causal, the other thing will say this causes this causes this. The other one cannot cause this. Injury cannot cause fall. I mean, fall can cause injury, but injury cannot cause fall. You understand? So that's actually the problem. What they call in economics endogeneity. Am I right, Kemi? Endogeneity. Once you you must remove endogeneity when you want to talk about causality. And that's actually it. We'll give an example. Whenever the arrow goes back, then you almost at the starting, you have gone back to zero. I'll give an example of this study. Dollar, Fishman, and Roberta are World Bank economists, brilliant economists. And they did a very robust, interesting study. Today, I think it's almost 1,000 citations already, published in 1999. What were they doing? They're saying that more women in parliament leads to less corruption across country. And it was a very beautiful study. They use, and very good study for that matter, they use corruption index in 100 and something countries in established democracies. And they looked at the number of women in each of these democracies. And they realized that where we have more women, the country will have less corrupt. And women were happy. And they started, and they started reading the paper and started citing the paper. More men started citing the paper. Maybe with annoyance that is not true, but they were citing the paper anyway. So what it means is this: for policy's sake, if we want to reduce corruption in Africa, what do we do? 60% women in parliament, 40% women in parliament, and we wipe out corruption. But it is a problematic because the arrow could go back. They couldn't trace how more women in parliament were leading to less corruption. It was just a kind of data. Beautiful, we're not doubting the method used, well-established method. But it could be that it's less corruption that led to more women in parliament. Because it has been theoretical possible. That in less corrupt countries, there are chances of women coming to parliament. So it may not actually be that more women in parliament who are reducing corruption. It may be that in less corrupt countries, there are chances of women coming to parliament. Are we seeing the problem with causality? See, if you are not doing that, they are not establishing causality. If you don't begin to deal with this. I'll give my example also because it's not only Dollar and Co that did. This is my study. I published this study in Evolution and Human Behavior. I think it's rated number 2 in Evolution and Psychology. And I did it with 2 Poles and 1 American. And what were we dealing with? We were dealing with number of children and marital satisfaction in Southeast Nigeria. That study, we had to do it in Poland and in US. But I started the study first. So when we completed our study, we got something that was really intriguing, counterintuitive in a way, because what is known in literature is that more children leads to dissatisfaction in marriage, well established in literature. But when we got this, it was a kind of challenging existing knowledge. So, and we started to try ourselves with that publication. And if just first place we sent it was Evolution and Human Behavior, and they published it. Why did they publish it? One, as I said, Fatai started in the morning. It was counterintuitive. But is it actually number of children that is leading to marital satisfaction, or marital satisfaction leading to more number of children? In short, it's more theoretical coherent to show that number of children should lead to more children, rather than number of children leading to marital satisfaction.
Marital satisfaction
should lead to more children for obvious reasons. Those who are satisfied with their marriages are more likely to stay with their husband or their wife. Am I right? And the more they stay with their husband, the more they do something there. And the more they do something, the more they produce children. Am I right? Is it not more theoretical coherent? Those who are dissatisfied with their marriage are not likely to stay with together. They are not going to be happy. And you know what happiness can do? Yes?
Let me just ask something.
Okay.
Did you consider the economic service?
Yes, that's the next thing I wanted to say.
Why do I raise that, Prof?
Yeah.
Because in a society where people are more poor, they have more children. Not because they're satisfied, but because the lights go off early.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they can do.
is to go to bed.
Okay.
And then maybe that alternative is that number of children is not does not lead to marital satisfaction, but marital tolerance.
Okay. Okay.
Just food for thought.
Okay. And that's why the study will not complete. We didn't complete this study here for obvious reasons. Evolution and Human Behavior will not publish this study without us taking care of that. We'll factor those things in. We'll control for wealth, control for all of that things that we were thinking of in the analysis. Before we also found out that after controlling for all these possible explanations, we still find that number of children were relating to marital satisfaction. But what I'm saying theoretically is that it could be the reverse, could be the case. It could be that it's the marital satisfaction that are creating more children, rather than more children creating marital satisfaction. But once you do a correlational study, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know which one is contributing to what. And that's why we need something like causality. In short, because we didn't settle with this. In 2000, we continue with this study. And we did it in 33 countries. We replicated this study in 33 countries, in Nigeria, in Ghana, Kenya, in Australia, in China, in US, in Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, in 33 countries. And when we did this in 33 countries, what did we find? We found no relationship. It was published in 2007 in Frontiers in Psychology. And that's what it means, is that there's something more to marital satisfaction than just number of children. And that's just like what we're saying. What it means is that number of children may not be the cause of marital satisfaction. And marital satisfaction may not actually be the cause of number of children. But we have not traced that angle, because if you need to do that, we need to start a causal study and to be able to trace the mechanism. What is marital satisfaction doing? Or what is number of children is doing to be able to produce number of whatever marital satisfaction. Once you don't do that, then you have some issues. And that's actually what we mean when we talk about causality. And that's why missing method may be the major solution to it. Yes.
Just, I'm curious. So what number of children did you find
that increased
marital satisfaction among the Igbo?
Okay, maybe as a summary, because this is not the focus of this, but maybe to give you an idea, maybe I will share the paper later. What we found out that it's just, in normal regression, you don't know bother about the number. You just regress number of children with the whatever, with number of marital satisfaction. But to realize that it continued, but it plateaued for women after 4 or 5 children. And it started dropping for women, but women continued. It was more linear for men than for women. So whatever it is, we gave some interpretation to it, but whichever way, what it means is that those who have 0 are less satisfied than those who have 1. Those who have 1 are less satisfied than those who have 2, and it continued in that order for it to be significant.
But for the men, is it in a monogamous relationship, because you said it continued, or in a polygamous one, because you could have started with wife number 1, and they had 5 children, and she's done with it, and it continues with bride number 1.
Okay. Okay, that's another thing for another day, because we thought that after publishing that in 2017, we have rested discussion on this. Because once we realize that in doing in 37 countries, it didn't make any meaning, what it means that there's nothing dealing with. But now that we have something to study, we thought that we have rested that case and nobody should be talking about marital satisfaction, number of children, as far as science is concerned. But that means we need more questions. So that's it. That's what study is all about. So can we just go back to typical causal diagram? Typical causal diagram, we mentioned it. What you just need is just X leading through mechanism to Y. But we needed to do this for you to realize that there could be background variables. But they are not of your interest. But they may also help you to build your case for X. Those possible things that may have led to X, where we are. But there's some issues at the background. Poverty is the cause of this. But something led to poverty, but that's not your focus. But you need to acknowledge either through writing to...
the stamina of the man that kicked the ball.
Oh yeah, that's that. Yes, something like that. So, but there's also possible other confounding variables, other possible variables that may also lead to Y apart from your own. Am I right? And that's why those of us, people think of dealing with control. You need to control them. Because if you don't control them and the Y is still there, you may not actually be sure that it's X that is leading to Y. You understand? Just for illustration purposes. Yes, Fatai, please.
I think this helps us to address Latanwa's observation that are we heading towards a monocausal design?
Yes. But I think, yeah. So this is actually what it is. It may not be, you recognize that there are some other factors, but you need really to have a robust, but that doesn't happen just because you wish to. What it means is the design must be watertight. The design you are using must be watertight. And that's why in every study, even for policymakers, what they need to do is how do you produce the evidence? It's even more for scientists. That's why every science is talking about methodology, especially when we want to produce empirical whatever. They continue hitting on methodology. How do they arrive at that? So that's it. Okay. So let's also go to this and just demonstrate with one example. This was done by, assuming that we decide to look at how school feeding leads to academic achievement of students. School feeding is our X, and academic achievement is our Y. That's our outcome. But we feel that school feeding doesn't just lead to academic achievement. It's doing something. Either it's raising students' motivation or making them to attend more. You understand? If you know you are going to eat food, and it's guaranteed, you will have to go. Am I right? Okay.
Because if you don't go, you'll be hungry.
Then then you may also, in the process of eating food, you may also learn more, and academic achievement may improve. Also, motivation to learn may be higher. So we are not saying this is exhaustive, but these are hypothetical issues. That's what we try to trace. Once you correlate this and find out that there is a relationship, you are not speaking to anybody. They want to know what is school feeding doing. Because if it's not doing this, then it may not be actually what is contributing to academic achievement. And that's, in those of us in quantitative, that's what they do. What they do is to model this as a mediator, and model this and test if there's a relationship. For us, whether you are doing it quantitatively or qualitatively, you need to ask people, go to where there is school feeding, and maybe try where there is no school feeding, and see what the type of things. Are they attending school more? You can ask them more questions. Are you not happy with your school? Whether it's true or descriptive or quantitative, it doesn't matter. But the important thing is that you are able to use a method to unravel this. So we are not a believer of this background. You understand? Family background may also be related to school feeding and others. And maybe I use just one example of school feeding may not make any meaning to some children. It may make to some others. I'll give you an example with my daughter. When we moved to Germany, my last kid was 5 years plus when we moved. And he stopped almost going to school because they were giving them food. Because in Germany, you don't start any serious school work till 6 years. But she was under 6. She went to school for about a week, 2 weeks, and returned one that said she's not going back again. Once the reason, he said they don't know anything here. Because she had started kindergarten before we left, and they started writing and reading. So there they were not writing, they were not reading. I said, what do? They say they know only 3 things there. They sleep, they eat, and they play. And I said, why? I said, she doesn't want to go again. So for her, school feeding was totally nothing for her. You understand? It was not making any sense. In short, for her, it was negative. So what they do there is early in the morning. And do you know, we eat 3 times there. Even if you want to eat more, they will ask you to go. There's a place we'll go out to eat if you want to eat more. So for her, it was distracting. So that's actually the context that we need to build a background. In short, almost we had to, at a point, the school wanted her to move to primary school. And we sent her, maybe erroneously, we went to, maybe it's traveling like from here to Lagos to do a school test. And after that, she passed up, but the last person that assessed a child psychologist just quickly noticed that she was not up to 6. She should be 6 in November, but that was in August. And he said, no, that is not allowed. Who sent her? Then we explained to her what happened. He said, it's not a problem, that we should go back. By the time we returned the following day, they have already called the school on what to do. So they started giving her some things to write, whether they're writing it for Renee's sake. And after a week, she came back and said, those people have changed. They have started writing something. So that's actually why background is very important. So it will also good to mention this. This may be what we call moderators, or whatever, those who deal with. Because class size may also, this may work, may lead to academic achievement, but class size may become a serious matter. Maybe class size may change the outcome. You understand? So if the class size is less and the school feeding is there, maybe the outcome will not be the same. So it's something to look at. Why we did this is not our focus, but just to know that they exist. And they are all contribute to building a robust,
Thank you very much. I have a question.
Okay, please do.
Okay, given all this A, B, C, X, Y, Z, when you are doing research, trying to situate this, that means that we should pay a lot of attention to Z.
Yes.
That's because when you were explaining earlier the X, Y, Z, the boy that you I was looking at it that, can we say Z is what gives X the power to cause Y? So that means that we need to give a lot of attention to Z. Not like, I want to really get...
That's it. You have summarized it. That's just some what we are discussing. This makes mechanism is so important to us, to policymakers, to researchers, because X may be known, Y may be known, and we have over years understand that this causes the, but we don't know the reason why they are causing it. Once we know the reasons why they are causing it, then we can have policy intervention at this point. What it means, school feeding leads to, but if it's not leading to motivation, it can't produce this. So what do we do? We need a school feeding that produces motivation. If there's a school feeding that's not producing regular attendance, then we can't achieve this. You understand? So you have just summarized our thinking around causality. Yes. Okay. Okay. So just a kind of more explanation on this. We started with understanding what it means, but we can use maybe the words. Some of us in quantitative can relate with this. Those in qualitative can relate with this. We can call it maybe independent variable. We can call it the causes predictors. We can call it whatever, causal factors. The mechanism can be intervening variable, can be mediating variables. That thing that lies in between the cause and effect is the power, as you said. The cause gives something that generates the energy for it to produce the final outcome. What is left for us as researchers is to be able to trace those things and be sure that this outcome is actually a product of these mechanisms. So that's actually what we mean. So I think we can move on. Do you have any question, please? Yes, Norma.
Does it mean that the moderating variables are not mechanisms?
They are not. Or do you think that? They are not. Okay. But a mechanism may be mediators. You can use the word mediate. You can say mediating variables. Moderators are something else. They are variables when they are there. The effect of the cause and effect may not be the same. It may be higher or lower. For example, we looked at class size the other side. Assuming that this class size, there's school feeding in a smaller class size may produce higher level of motivation than school feeding in a large class.
Is that why we do not have arrows pointing to the outcome of cause from the moderating variable?
Of course. Moderating variable is not causing this. It's not rather causing this, but it's there. As it's there for you to be interested in it. For those of us in quantitative science, you model moderators to see if this result will change for two categories of people. There's school feeding in one place. There's school feeding in another place. But the achievement is not the same for these two groups of people. That's a moderator. Why is it that this school feeding in one place, producing motivation, the same motivation in the two places, but one is higher, the other one is low? It can be a contest. Maybe in Kenya, there's school feeding, but it's not producing high motivation. But there's school feeding in Nigeria, it's producing high motivation. You can ask yourself questions. Why? It's something, food for thought. But it's not actually what is producing the effect, but it's changing the outcome a bit. So you will become more interested in that moderator. So that's actually what we mean. So, but in building your model, you may not bother so much about this. You can use that as design. You can design your study to recognize that. You know that school feeding size will affect it. You design to check, either to mix up. Study the one in large class and study the one in big. If they are producing the same effect, you say, okay, it's not a problem for me. So it becomes a kind of, it helps in interpretation of your results. Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Yes.
The moderating variables.
Yes.
I'm trying to look at the issue of context.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that not speak to the problem you raised earlier about the claims that most researchers make over here?
Yeah.
That because this has been done there, it has not been done here. That's why we are setting out with this research. So if it's possible that context can influence outcome, does that not support that claim?
No. We are not against the claim. Nobody is against the claim, but we say we should claim with caution. We just claim that something doesn't exist, that human beings are the same. That when we cut people's leg in Nigeria, there will be no blood. You know that when you cut people's leg, there will be blood. It's established in Europe, and you start cutting people's leg here, and assuming that there's not going to be blood, you are doing no science, because you know that human nature is already established that way. There's no need repeating it. But there's something that may happen. Maybe our tolerance to pain may be different. You can decide also to look at level of tolerance here and level of tolerance, because you know, maybe because of culture, you need to build our culture because we have been insulated from pain or have been exposed to pain more than others. But there's something that will make meaning. The context should make meaning. But if it's something that doesn't make any meaning, no, it's a kind of doing things that along the line is not speaking to anybody. You are not producing any new evidence. That's just what we are saying. Context matters a lot. Matters a lot. Yeah. Okay. Even our tolerance to pains, to anger, they are different based on context. You see someone maybe in some part of the world, you little shock, the person will commit suicide. But somewhere, no matter the way you deal with the person, he's even smiling. You understand? And at a point, they say Nigerians are the happiest people on earth. And people who are doubting. It may not be because things are good, but because their resilience level are high. And they may have developed it over years. Yes. Okay. All right. So can we quickly look at causal notions? You know, we have asked few questions. We are almost through with this session. We are going to start off hands-on, trying ourselves with our own concept note to see if we can build a model that recognizes causal factor, the mechanism, and outcome when we come back in the afternoon. But before we do that, let's try some of the questions we raised earlier by looking at causal notions. Causality can come in different ways. We can have very simple causal relationship, cause and effect. Some of them may be more complex. Some of them may also be the one that Stephen raised, a causal factor. Some of them may be multiple. So we can just look at them briefly to see some possibilities in cause and effect relationship. Okay. So we can have this. Conjunctures. In conjunctures, two or more causes can act together to produce an effect. Can you see, we're starting with you, Stephen. This is not just one factor, A causing B. It's possible. But there are some issues that require that two factors or three factors needed to be there to produce an effect. So if any of them is not there, the effect may not be felt, or at least in the intensity that is happening. So maybe I just give example to just this. We will look at decision-making, free mental care, community sensitization, and increased access to referral. Assuming that there is no default decision-making, access to referral may not be there. Assuming this paper was done by one of us, Susan, in our joint project we did in different parts of the country. She anchored that one in Kenya with his colleagues. I did one with Fataya and Ayo in Nigeria. So one of the studies came this way. So they realized that free mental health care will lead to increased access. But if you remove free mental care and allow only community sensitization, no matter how long you continue to sensitize people, but it's not free, you will not see anybody. Do you understand? But in the combination of this factor, you can see the combination, they are not individual, they are not affecting this individual, but they needed the three to produce an effect. That's what we mean by conjunctural factors. I think it happens a lot in social sciences. One factor may not actually produce an outcome. For example, poverty. What leads to poverty may not just be economic, whatever, the GDP of a country. Maybe a country may be rich, but it's not also, the poverty is still high there. So it may be something. Maybe leadership may be important. So some other thing may also, maybe fertility of the land may also be important. So that even if they don't have money, or maybe a global or national level, individual will be able to plant something and get food and eat. So there may be a combination of factors, all of them present before poverty can reduce. So something like that. However, this is just another one. This is just an explanation of the other one. You can see the picture here. This is a kind of an accident. This person was not careful. The other person opened whatever, and this one was also running. So with this, we were looking sideways. But assuming that one is correct, his chances that accident may not happen is there. Assuming he's looking, but the door was not open, he can pass. Do you understand? The same thing with what we are seeing here. Maybe what led to the accident that this driver was riding at very top speed. There's elephant crossing. There's also brake failure, and there's incoming vehicle that led to that. Because assuming that the high speed, but there was no brake failure. Even if the elephant is crossing, you can match the brake and get it. Am I right? It's just theoretical. Or assuming that there is brake failure, elephant is crossing, speed driving, but there's no oncoming vehicle. You can swerve and continue moving. Do you understand? So, but on its own. There's no economic recession, there's no corruption, but there's war. Tore the country apart. You can see high level of poverty on their own. Corruption can be the major source of poverty, especially in Nigeria. There's no war, there's no economic recession. There's money everywhere. The amount of petrol, whatever, petroleum we will sell in the international market every day is enough to develop the whole of Africa. So there's no problem with economic recession. In short, what Nigeria produces a day is enough to take care of the whole of Africa, and even more. But there's still poverty. And then maybe only corruption that is single-handedly producing this effect. Okay, all right. They also what we call power dependence. In power dependence, maybe little explanation here. Well, it's just a cause that has a kind of enduring structural effect. Something happens, and over time, major other happenings continue to follow that path. In short, when we say you are power dependent, it means that one person follows here, another person follows here, another person follows here. It may be the longest route, but everyone just felt that that's the best way to follow. And some causes will endure that way. I'll give just one example to show it. Something like this. The development of typewriters in the have really, this has endured over time, including our telephone, and nobody knows when it will stop. So why should all technology follow that path that started with just simple typewriter? When the electronic typewriter came up, we followed it. The computers again followed it. And almost the keyboard are also having the column LKJ or whatever. Do you understand? So kind of a power dependent. We can change it in even a better. We have not even tried another power that didn't work. But it has continued to. Maybe another innovation may even be better. Even maybe in our own way of reasoning. This one is even difficult because there's no pattern in the keys.
QWERTY.
Yes.
It's called a QWERTY keyboard.
Yes.
So if you put your hands
Yeah.
there, the way you type is the way you do it here, is the way the way they arrange the keys over here.
Over there. So but I was saying why? Why not just do it even A, B, C, D so that it becomes easier? You understand? So so that even when you don't remember, you should be able to guess where A should be. But it has failed. And that's what we mean by power dependence. Most developmental strides, even our thinking also follow that kind of power dependence in a way. Okay. All right. Then causal chain is the last we're going to deal with. Causal chain in terms of, it could be very straightforward. Democratic status leading to quality service delivery. Simple. That's the simplest of the causal relationship we are dealing with. But we'll say that this doesn't tell us the stories. But it can also solve. Most of the correlational studies will do this with this kind of thing. But it can be more than this. It could be this, leading to this, and leading to this. Simple is simple, but it's indirect simple chain. Some of them may be more complex than this. It could be series of events. This is a study I did with Fatai and Ayo on democratic status and service delivery in this part of the world. And we realized that democratic status led to pressure of government to perform. Because when we finished the study, there was a background. When we finished the study, we felt that a democratically elected local councils should be doing better in service delivery, security service delivery, in terms of at least at perception level, than those that are appointed. But when we got the result, we saw something opposite. Those that were appointed were perceived to be doing better. Then we decided to do more studies to unravel the mechanism. Why are they perceiving these people to be doing more? Realize that in democratically elected councils, there's pressure to perform by the citizen. And this pressure to perform makes them to create large, sometimes unrealistic projects, security projects. Vigilante, we are going to pay in every ward, we are going to employ 100 vigilante groups. We are going to buy vehicles for them and this. They started the bet, was not sustainable. So these projects failed. And the people became more dissatisfied and the perception was low. So this is a kind of understanding the mechanism. Why are they really perceiving this local council as less? So this is it. This could be more complex. We could trace them from two major areas. Maybe pressure to perform and expansion of government institutions. Do you understand? All leading to poor service delivery. So it could be that. And so if you open any journal article today, especially those ones dealing with modest and quantitative. This is the type of figures you see every time. And they need something to do that. You can use one method. Those who are doing a lot of structural equation models, regression or whatever. You can also do stories. You can use stories to tell about how these things are happening. Our own, you use stories. You use regression at the first stage, but you use stories to tell what is going on. So we are not saying it's only one method. Don't say here, you are here. It's only for those that are quantitative that can do this, please. Okay, just like the Sheikh story. I will trace here and you could see Sheikh did this and this and this. But we know that this is the one that was valid, was proved. This one would have happened, but it never happened. Do you understand? Am I right? Okay. Okay. So just a kind of narrative of that. An individual is neglected by his parents. He comes to destroy others, and as a result has trouble maintaining friendship, has trouble in school, and eventually gets addicted to drugs. To support his habit, he starts selling drugs and is ultimately arrested and committed for drug trafficking. We're just looking at how can parents' neglect leads to drug trafficking. You can see the chains of events that actually resulted in that. So once you just child neglect leads to drug trafficking, it will not make meaning to many people. They need to know how is it actually producing that. Because you can do some studies and isolate these things, but they may not play out that way. Okay, so we may not have this. When we return, we can go about doing that. So surely we have almost eaten into our break time. But we can share in 1 or 2 minutes if we have anything to ask or what you need us to clarify, and we can go straight for our lunch break. Yes. Okay, Lillian, please. Okay. Did anybody get it, please? Did anybody get equifinality? Can you explain? Yes, Evelyn.
Yes, thank you so much. Excuse me. When it comes to business research, you use this a lot. Now, each of those parameters are taken as individual causes.
Yeah.
And they can affect poverty individually without combining any of them.
Yes.
And their effects will always be different. So the effect of economic recession on poverty might either be higher compared to the effect of war, compared to poverty, or corruption on poverty. So each of them stand as individual IVs or causes, which are not dependent on any of this. So each of them is like, I always want to use it, if you permit me.
Yeah, use it.
We are 3 of us here. We have Daniel, we have Lynn, and also we have Fina. So Fina is the person who wants to see her character. So when she interacts with Daniel, the way Daniel affects her is totally different. It's not dependent on my interaction. And my interaction with her will actually produce a different character, which is not dependent on Daniel. And the same will apply to Lynn. The way Lynn affects is totally different, which is not contingent on our interaction here.
Good. Lynn, do you appreciate what you say?
Yes.
So the difference between this and conjunctural is that in conjunctural, anyone that is not there may lead to this not happening. So the other one is dependent on the other one to happen. If the person is careful, even if you have opened the door, you can navigate. But the other ones are happening, whether they're there or not, it will still produce an effect. Like as he said, for her in economics or political science or whatever, if you are doing something like regression, you bring all the factors to play. But you can decide which of the factors is contributing more than the other. But they're all contributing. But they don't need a combination. In the other one, you need a combination. Anyone that is not there may lead to the effect not happening. So which is different from equifinality. What it means is that they're all equal factors. They're all factors in their own right. That's it. Yes?
The next slide, please.
Yes? The next slide. Okay.
The very last.
Very last. Is it what? Okay.
No, the boy and drug trafficking.
The narrative.
This one. Now, this boy who is neglected, you see the neglected and the ends at drug trafficking. Now, the story in between, is that the story?
That is
That's
the
not
mechanism.
just the description.
The mechanism.
The mechanism.
Yes.
Now, is that is our Z?
Yes.
Which is also not the
You can have Z1, Z2, one leading to another to get to. Yes.
I wanted to understand.
That's easy. What we need here is to tell a story without a diagram. It can be through a story, it could be diagrammatic, it can be done in different ways. This is just one way of understanding these mechanisms. So for some of us who are not interested in using models or using figures or using diagrams, you can tell the story. And it's now left for you to develop a method that can help you to tell the story. So that's it. So you shouldn't just be looking at neglect and child trafficking or trafficking in drugs. Look at the reasons why neglect should be able to do that. And you can use through your ethnography, phenomenological approach, you can still achieve this. But it requires skills. Yes.
Maybe, Prof, I'm just looking at this with the diagram that you put on C.
Yeah.
In direct relationship.
Yes.
Neglect leads to distrust, which leads to troubled friendship, which leads to this, then eventually you see the drug trafficking. And so I'm actually looking at it with the C, where you put the chain of the four.
As soon as we have opportunity of giving, you know, I promise that I'm a repentant person. If not, I'm a repentant person, I would have given you assignment on this. Maybe to convert this to a diagram. But you can do that on your own. When you get this slide, you can just take time and know if you can depict this thing in diagrammatical form. So you can make more meaning. Huh? Okay, all right. Thank you. I think we have been wonderful this morning. Yeah.
Quickly, we want to have a brief discussion with one of our facilitators, and he is an organizational psychologist from the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, and he has been facilitating one of the modules. We'll briefly have a short discussion with him and find out what has been happening throughout the sessions and what we should expect in the next few days to come. Prof, you're welcome to AU Television.
All right, thank you, Sam. I'm really happy to be with you this morning.
Great. Pedal keeps surprising us all the time. We were here some few months ago talking about pedagogical leadership. This time around, we are back to Ibadan and we are discussing advanced or multi-method policy-oriented research. Why do we need such a discussion or such a training in a period like this?
Okay. PASGR has really been pioneering a research revolution in Africa. And I'm privileged to be associated with this for the past 6 years. I was a trainee sometime in 2013, 2014. And since then, I've joined the facilitating team as a faculty member. And the reason why we continue to think about research is that research will surely drive the African development. And social science has a lot of role to play. It's not just about technological breakthrough. It's also about adopting technology. It's about changing the way we do things. It's about changing the attitude of our leaders, changing the attitude of citizens. And social science has a lot of role to play in this regard. So building capacity of African scholars to be able to do groundbreaking research and research that contributes to development is very important. And I think that's what PASGR is trying to do. And that's what we have been doing so far.
Great. So in the rooms I was there yesterday, we could see that it was a mixture of entry researchers or let's say early career researchers and some astute researchers as well. Now, what is so different for them?
Okay, I think it's a very, very good combination. This intergenerational mix is really important. We have very seasoned, experienced researchers, and we have also very young researchers, some of them starting their PhDs, so which is good. Because what we have realized in the past is that when young scholars come in here, they're excited, they are amazed with the new things they're learning, but the major challenge is that they find it difficult to also practice this, especially when they're still developing. So what it means is that we needed also to have people who have also experienced researchers to also understand what is going on, to retool, because the short thing is that they need to be doing it right. We need to do it in another way, because African research is really not where it's supposed to be. As you know, we are contributing less than 1% of research output in the world, and what it means, we are not doing good research. We need to do better. So both experienced and less experienced researchers needed also to retool, so that we begin to produce research that's evidence-based. So having this kind of mix is good. The experienced one can share the experiences with the upcoming ones, while the upcoming ones also could learn, and they can have a kind of critical mass of scholars who will understand what it means to do research that will produce evidence that will influence policy or inform policy.
Great. And so what are some of the models that the participants will be studying within the next 14 days?
Okay, here we have majorly 4 modules for the advanced research design, and we have another 2 modules we'll take as electives. The 4 modules in advanced research design, we started yesterday with designing social inquiry, and that is actually focused on designing good research work, which is very important at the basic for doing good research. So we started and we'll do that for 4 days. After that, we are going to take on mixed method research, and that's just exposing them to using both quantitative and qualitative research and combining that to produce research that is really valid, evidence-based, that can give them confidence to speak to policy actors, and as well publish good papers that also will be competing with papers coming from other parts of the world. Then we also have the critical policy engaged research as the 3rd one, and that will be about looking at how research can speak to policy, how policy can also speak to research, and if we can have a kind of a mix. That's what that model will be dealing with. Then the last one will be just a 1-day module on ethics, because we feel that ethics is very important, especially for African researchers, because of the challenges that we have here. We feel that ethics should be at the base, so we'll be doing a day model on that. So after that, they'll take elective. Either they do a gender social science research, or they take on impact evaluation. So they'll be running concurrently, so no participant will be expected to do 2 at the same time. But they have opportunity of doing that later, maybe next year when we'll do another round of this training. So we'll continue to have 1 or 2 method modules in each of our deliveries. So that's what we're expecting for the next 14 days or so.
So you're absolutely right. Africa contributes less than 1% of the knowledge economy globally. But my question is, how do we build a very robust research system in African universities and Africa as a whole to be able to kind of meet or bridge the gap that we have?
Okay, I think PASGR is really doing well. What is obvious is that African universities are not actually focusing on training people to become researchers. So there is a disconnect. They want to have PhDs that are talking about numbers or PhDs produced, but it's not actually what we should be emphasizing. We should be emphasizing quality PhDs, because it's important to train scholars to become researchers, not just to earn a degree, but to learn the rudiments of research. So what I feel a way out is also what PASGR is doing. Beyond the training on research method done by university, that should be a kind of this kind of training, maybe a short training, maybe summer schools in different universities, clusters of universities that can have summer schools for upcoming researchers when they learn rudiment of research as part of their PhD training. So I think it's very important, because once they develop these skills, they will be able to do research that are comparable and competitive, because we have the same space. Top journals look for top scholars, and they also publish good research. So we need that space, and we cannot occupy that space if you are not doing also good research like others. So that's one. And also we need also to produce research that will inform policy. And we cannot produce research that will inform policy if the evidence are not watertight. What it means is that if we depend on such kind of evidence, policy will miss policy actors or policy makers, policy actors, and that's under development. So I think that's where we are. That's why.
So you have been a facilitator for some time now. What do you make of the entry level of the participants when they come in? Are there times where their whole knowledge has been distorted? I know before they come in, they bring in concept note. When you compare their entry point to their exit point, do you see any differences in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience that they have acquired?
Yes, I think it's expected that they come here with a lot of information. Some of them are relevant, some of them are important for them to start off, but we have this is a 10-day program, but it's something, a turning point for many people. It was a turning point for me, and it has remained a turning point for many scholars, because you have been doing it, but we have not been getting it right. So you come here, you are exposed to real research issues, and they always go back overwhelmed. and they acquire a lot of knowledge. But it's really what to take a little bit step by step. Yes, there you can see that I've started well, but every day you can see a kind of an improvement in what they're doing. Some of them came here with quantitative background, very difficult to shift. Some come with qualitative background, they're also very difficult. But by the time they stay here for 2, 3, 4 days, they begin to see the relevance of each of the methods. By the time they come back to talk about mixed method and others, they are already exposed to knowing the value of combining methods. And I'm so happy and emotional also about this program. As after my exposure, I was allowed to participate as a facilitator, and I have done something that I feel is really important to me. So what I do here is that you can see I have about 4 of my faculty members here, and the 2 will be joining in the methods, in the electives. So I have a grant. I have instituted a grant in my faculty to support faculty members who attend this program. You know, this is the first time it's holding in Nigeria. It was in Nairobi, and even when they are supported by PASGR, they also find it difficult to pay their flight ticket. So what I've done is also to use the little resources I have to support them to pay their tickets. I know it's not enough for them to do that, but at least it gives them confidence that what we are doing is a serious issue. Because if it has impacted on my own career, I believe it will also impact on them. And so far, we have gotten almost 10 scholars from my university attended this program, and they continue to give testimonies of how the program has changed them. And my colleagues have also seen the transformation in the scholars. Maybe my own personal, I can share my own personal experience. Okay, I came in here in as a participant in 2013 to 14, and after that, my scope changed, and I will also say my career changed. I started writing better proposals, and from there I was able to apply for Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship in Germany. And as you know, it's one of the most competitive fellowship, and also one of the most, I would say, life-changing fellowships, because once you have a Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship, it's for life. You are supported throughout your life career as a researcher. So I got it, and I spent the 2 years in Germany. And they sponsored not only myself but my family. So we spent 2 years at the University of Munster, where I also did some few good studies, and got some of my few papers published in very, very good journals. So I returned back to Nigeria late last year, and Alexander von Humboldt also followed me to Nigeria. They continue to support my research, and they gave me 1 year again support. And they have continued to support my research that may be ending in this September. And after that, I also have opportunity of exploring other opportunities of Alexander von Humboldt. So for me, it's life-changing. It has continued to do that, and I have continued also to have not only publishing papers, but also publishing papers that are creating impact and very, very good journals. So, and my colleagues are also benefiting. I've also worked with my colleagues in some of these research projects, but I also want them to come to this program, and they are happy. So far, they have also started giving testimony. I've spent just 1 day, and already giving testimony, thanking me for exposing them to this kind of training. I do hope that we have enough resources to continue to expose more scholars to this program. Not only this program, but program that will build them, give them the necessary platform to operate as scholars. So that's.
So most of the time, African universities have been chastised that they produce research outputs that are just shelved. They are not even of quality to even talk about commercialization. As an astute researcher and academic in universities, if we are pushing for research reforms in universities, can you give us 3 things that we must pay attention to?
One is research quality. The quality in terms of rigor. You need to produce evidence that is convincing, that is following standard research scientific procedures. When you produce that, the chances of pushing them out of the university will be high. Secondly, the universities also need to engage. They need to move out of their comfort zone. Not just producing research, but producing research for the society. What it means that the society needed to know. And that's what I mean in terms of commercialization. And finally, they really need to engage government. They need to engage government because you can see that most African universities are funded by government. The government, it seems to not to care about what they are producing. They send universities on an errand to produce scholars and produce evidence, and they are not following this evidence, meaning university need not to continue to wait. They need to begin to engage government. Beyond engaging other stakeholders, they need to specifically engage government to make sure that they value the resources they are investing in universities.
There is one disheartening phenomenon happening at universities where students who are even researchers are not actually doing their own research, but they are employing research institutions, not even institutions, people to just kind of, or they are outsourcing their research work for people to do for them, even at the highest level, as a PhD. Is it so worrisome for us as academics? Must we be worried about this phenomenon? And what should we do to stop such an occurrence? Is it good for us? Is it bad? What must we do?
I think it's not good. That's just the simple fact. But I think it's not really an issue that we cannot correct. It depends on what we want to use these PhDs for. I think it should start from the society. In other parts of the world, if you have a doctorate and you cannot do anything, you can't get employed. So it becomes a useless degree. And if people know that they are going to pay to get a degree that doesn't worth anything, they will not do that. So it has to do with also the way our employment policies, the way we do our things. If we are looking for scholars who are good and we have a way of identifying them, and universities are evaluated based on what they are producing. So what it means is that people should be looking for universities that are giving them the necessary skills to excel. In other part of the world, in Europe, for example, Germany, Netherlands, in the US, people don't buy certificates because you need to be employed, and nobody will employ you if you are not producing. So if you're able to help someone to get a doctorate, they buy their doctorate. Would they be buying their papers? They cannot. Would they be buying the skills to train students? They will not. So they cannot rise. So even if they get employed in universities, they won't be able to perform, and because of that they get frustrated out of the system. So the thing is that it's not a one-way traffic. We need to also to reorganize our system to be able to recognize merit, and once they begin to recognize merit, then students will also know the relevance of acquiring skills. So PhD is not about the certificate. It should be about training people on how to acquire skills, and we need also to look at how to measure these skills. So the measurement of PhD should not be just about maybe 1 week oral, 1 day viva. We need maybe to be innovative in terms of assessing how the output. If we can think through that in terms of quality of where they are producing or they publishing these papers and how they are doing that. So I think it may go a long way to really change the orientation.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Professor Ernest Onyishi. We will still follow up throughout the presentations and find out what is happening. Thank you.